As we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you. Okay. Full screen tonight. Well, good evening and welcome to this cabinet meeting. And can we start with apologies for
Yeah, sure. If you just bear with me, I'll just check.
No apologies this evening, Leader.
Thank you. We move then on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Hollingsby.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I want to ask Amandeep's advice on item 11, the private sector housing enforcement and civil penalty, because I am a landlord in the district, and I just want to know whether I should declare an interest. But I need to declare an interest on item 14, Otterpool Park business plan, and I'm advised that I need to leave the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsby. I believe in relation to item 11, you can speak and participate in relation to this item.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I will make the same declaration myself. I am a landlord in the district.
So it's a voluntary.
Yeah, it's a voluntary.
Yeah.
We can speak and stay and vote and everything, but it's for transparency's sake. Okay, we move then on to item 3, to consider and approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of December 2020. Do we agree those? The easiest way, is there any dissension? No, so I will accept those minutes. Thank you. Then we go on to item 4, Romney Marsh Coordinator post funding. And that is Councillor Wimble.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very happy to bring this recommendation to Cabinet. As you know, having my ward slap bang in the middle of the marsh, I have over the 50 odd years I've been alive, seen what a big part Dungeness power stations have made on our economy. And with Dungeness A and B being by far the largest employers on the marsh, and not only that, actively bringing such a huge boost to our economy. With Magnox and the NDA taking a very responsible role within the district, with, of course, the closure of Dungeness A number of years ago, they partnered with the local authority on a number of key projects and remain good business associates to the district. One of the key things they've done is to help support the Romney Marsh Partnership, whose role is very multifaceted and above and beyond everything else, looks for opportunities for investment in the district, which will facilitate growth and employment schemes, which are based around so many sectors that our microeconomy depends on, including manufacturing, tourism, etc., and basically making the marsh a much better place to live. The position of the coordinator is essential, in my view, for the next 3 years, as the position looks for both projects and funding opportunities. Although I'm saddened that both Rother and Ashford Borough Councils have pulled the plug on the funding for this, I'm glad that we're sticking with it along with Magnox. I hope the Cabinet approves the recommendations to facilitate the essential role for the next 3 years, and welcome the inclusion of this role being match funded by the NDA and, of course, Magnox.
Are you proposing the recommendations?
I am proposing the recommendations.
Is there a seconder for that?
Happy to second, Leader.
Right, that was Councillor Collier. Okay, over to you, members. Councillor Wybrow.
Thank you. Yeah, I can see this is a really important post to the economy of Romney Marsh. Unfortunately, paragraph 2.7 says that part of the role will be to promote new nuclear opportunities. So I'm afraid I can't vote for it, so I will have to abstain. I think it's probably unlikely that we'll get new nuclear facilities down there just because of the flood risk, but nevertheless, I can't be seen to promote nuclear. So,
okay,
sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Hollingsby.
Well, I think it's a very important role as well, and I'm really pleased that we're going to support it. I just wanted to query or just ask about the Magnox role. I assume that they will come up with the funding.
Well, that is part of the recommendation that we do take the funding opportunity to them, but they've certainly given the impression that they would like to do it. And some of the money is also being put forward.
indicated that they are for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Godfrey.
Yes, absolutely support this. I've seen what the role does in my other capacity has been on the stakeholder group, and I'm fairly confident there'll be no problem with Magnox coming forward the meeting. They need to work with us, and it's very important we keep an eye on that site and everything they're doing. And it's not about new nuclear necessarily. There are maybe other opportunities that come through the NDA and other partners. So we should keep a very close eye on all of this, and I'm very much happy to support it.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish? Councillor Prater.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor Godfrey. I think the chances of new nuclear being this role in the next 3 years, delivering new nuclear on that site, is minimal, but weird things happen. My question is on the match funding issue. If they do not agree to the match funding, does our funding fall as the post cannot be funded?
As I see it, that would be a major hurdle, but would not necessarily mean the end. There are other funding streams we could look at. I know KCC are looking at putting a small part towards this from their residue from the Marsh Millions money.
Yeah, right, Councillor Prater.
Okay, so just we're agreeing a maximum of £30,000 a year for the next 3 years, and the money will be sought from somewhere else. But if it can't come from somewhere else, we won't be asked for more.
I would assume at that junction we'd have to come back to Cabinet, but that is what we're asking for, 50% match funding.
Yeah, I think that is right. If we need more than that, it won't have been approved by us, and it would have to come back. I think that's fair enough. Okay, anybody else wish to speak? Then it is proposed by Councillor Wimble, seconded by Councillor Collier. All in favour, please will you take the call? Gemma.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Wybrow.
Abstain.
Councillor Wimble.
For.
I make that 8-4 and 1 abstention, Leader.
Thank you. We now then move on to. Just get me, make sure I'm on the, get my right thing. Right. Item 5, which is the Treasury Management Strategy, and that is mine. Treasury Manager and report. Again, the next few have been two overview and scrutiny, and no great problems there. We do have, and I should have mentioned it right at the beginning, we do have an addendum to report CO 20/65, which is the next, well, no, it's not the next one along. If anybody hasn't got a copy of that addendum, it's to do with the loan to the Folkestone Parks and Pleasure Ground. So if you haven't got it, I can get you a copy sent. Okay, so we go on to Treasury Management Strategy and Treasury Management Report. I think our Treasury Management is absolutely wonderful, and I have absolutely no problem in recommending the recommendations. So I need a seconder. Anyone to second? That's David Godfrey. Okay, over to you, members. Councillor Wybrow.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very good report. It's a very thorough report and happy to support it. Just one request. When we have the report next year, could we please consider having some sort of climate impact part of it so that our investments are assessed for their impact on climate change and carbon measurements and so on, please?
I'll certainly consider that. We'll get that considered. I won't make a decision like that on the hoof. I don't at this juncture see any problem with that, but I'll just make sure. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No. Well, it's proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Godfrey. All those in favour, Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier,
4.
Councillor Godfrey,
4.
Councillor Field,
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby,
4.
Councillor Monk,
4.
Councillor Peel,
4.
Councillor Prater,
4.
Councillor Wybrow,
4.
Councillor Wimble.
4.
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you. We now move on to item 6, which is the HRA budget monitoring Q3. And we go then to Councillor Godfrey for this one.
Thank you, members. This also went through scrutiny finance subcommittee and no major problems. Things to note, I think, are the revenue prediction to 2.2 million underspend on revenue budget with a loss of rental incomes due to COVID-19 and increased cost of new housing structure being offset by a reduced revenue contribution to capital due to slippage in the capital programme. That's pretty standard at the moment with everything that's going on. Capital, the projected 5.3 million underspend on capital budget due to slippage in the enhanced capital, the same story really, programme, awaiting outcomes of the full stock condition that we're having done on all of our housing stock. I recommend this report to you and would look for a seconder, please.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs Hollingsby. Okay, over to you, members. I think the mention of the housing stock survey, this is the critical feature of all of our HRA budgetary considerations for the future. We need the outcome of that to know where we are and what we've got to do. Okay, so no other member wishes to speak. So it's proposed by Councillor Godfrey, seconded by Councillor Mrs Hollingsby. All those in favour, Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier,
4.
Godfrey,
4.
Councillor Field,
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby,
4.
Councillor Monk,
4.
Councillor Peel,
4.
Councillor Prater,
4.
Councillor Wybrow,
4.
Councillor Wimble.
4.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. We'll then move on to item 7, the general fund revenue budget monitoring third quarter. Again, we took this to the overview and scrutiny. And I said then it is what it is. Well, at the moment, everything's still fluid. Government continues to give us money, which we don't know we've got coming. We've gone into another period of lockdown. It's a snapshot in time, but I propose a recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Peel, thank you. Does anybody wish to speak to it? No, I wouldn't. Okay, so proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Peel. All in favour? Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier,
4.
Councillor Godfrey,
4.
Councillor Field,
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby,
4.
Councillor Monk,
4.
Councillor Peel,
4.
Councillor Prater,
4.
Councillor Wybrow,
4.
and Councillor Wimble.
4.
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you. We now move on to item 8, which the addendum applies to, report C20/65, where we add a third recommendation, which is to agree to extend the loan to Folkestone Parks and Pleasure Grounds charity by £43,000 to support the completion of the Beach Huts project at Marine Parade. Okay, then again, this went to scrutiny. Our capital programme is very sound, I believe. Over to you, members. I propose a recommendation. Still have a seconder. Councillor Stewart, and over to you, members. Councillor Prater.
Thank you. This isn't going to be a huge surprise to anybody. Line 42 on page 88 of the medium-term financial plan incorporates the Prince's Parade investment and puts £18 million worth of investment into next year and £11 million into the following year. I pride myself on my consistency on these things. At the council meeting last year, I proposed an amendment to remove the Prince's Parade Leisure and Housing Development from the budget and to come back instead with an alternative when that had been costed up. I'm not going to move that amendment this evening. I might leave that till next month, but I can't support a medium-term financial programme which includes that Prince's Parade project in it. So I won't be supporting it. I think that the vast majority of the remainder of the programme I do support, but that's £28 million that I can't see myself to supporting. So I'm afraid I'll be voting against it, but I'll save you the time this evening of proposing an amendment. And I'll see if council will instead support me in February.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Wybrow.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be surprised to note that I am in the same position as Councillor Prater. I support just about everything else in this budget, but I can't support it because of the Prince's Parade item. Okay.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Then it's proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Peel. All those in favour, Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier.
4.
Councillor Godfrey.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Hollingsby.
4.
Councillor Monk.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Prater.
Against.
Councillor Wybrow.
Against.
And Councillor Wimble.
4.
I make that 7-4 and 2 against, Leader.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 9, which is the housing revenue account and capital budget. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Leader. Again, members, this went before overview and scrutiny, financial subcommittee with no major. There were comments. I would draw attention to the proposed rental increases in line with government policy, which is CPI plus 1% and equating to 1.5% increase, averaging 1.27 pence, £1.27 a week. And there is an anticipated 5% loss of rent income due to the ongoing impact of COVID. I would also point out increased general management costs relating to the transition of the new housing service to us and additional funds for a full stock condition survey, which was mentioned in the budget monitoring report. So again, slippage in capital expenditure is because of delays to the new build programme. I'm happy to say that we're expecting the new build programmes at Highview and Biggins Wood to commence in 21-22, and a new acquisition opportunities are also expected to come forward during the year. I would recommend, I wish to move the report and...
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that report? Was that as Councillor Wybrow? Yep. Okay. Okay, over to you, members. No. Councillor Prater, you didn't use a little blue hand. I look into the top left-hand corner of your screen to see whether there's a hand up. Thank you.
Apologies, I will use my little blue hand in future. as a Smurf once said. I think that we can all get behind the fact that we regret rents going up, but 1.5%. But I do understand the reasoning for doing so. I do understand the investment case for doing so. I'm comfortable that the council is putting in a lot of money into improving its housing stock, and it needs to, but it recognises that and it is being done. I'm also, we are meeting the rent standard, which was set by government at that stage. So although I regret it, I do understand why, and 1.5% isn't a huge percentage increase, but I just wanted to flag that up. But yeah, I can support it on the basis of the investment which is otherwise going in.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to comment? No. Okay, so it's proposed by Councillor Godfrey, seconded by Councillor Wybrow. All those in favour? Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier,
4.
Councillor Godfrey,
4.
Councillor Field,
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby,
4.
Councillor Monk,
4.
Councillor Peel,
4.
Councillor Prater,
4.
Councillor Wybrow,
Or
Councillor Wimble.
4.
That's unanimous, Leader.
Excellent, thank you. We're now moving on to agenda item 10, which is the draft general fund budget for 21-22. Again, a superb piece of work, I think. Although, once again, we're slightly in the lap of the gods for some of the income streams that we identify. But I believe everything is now containable to come up with, as we are indeed legally obliged to come up with a balanced budget for next year. As anybody, I like to propose it and the recommendations. Is there a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Mrs Hollingsby, and over to you, members. Councillor Wybrow.
Thank you. As you know, I asked an awful lot of questions about this item ahead of the meeting, which suggests to me that perhaps the report could be a bit clearer on a couple of things. So before it goes to Cabinet, I would like to ask that it actually explains the reduction in the new homes bonus, that it explains the capital expenditure met from revenue, and that it explains...
Before it goes to Council, do you?
Council, yes. Sorry, did I say Cabinet? Yes. So I think that would be helpful. I've also asked Charlotte, and I think there's something that Councillor McConville also asked, if maybe the line-by-line budget could be simplified, because it's very hard to follow this year with so much being transferred between one budget head to another because of transformation and so forth. But Charlotte has promised that she would look at that for me.
Okay.
The last questions I've got really relates to Falker, because I was a bit concerned that we didn't have enough cost in there. So Charlotte's come back to me just before this meeting and said that there is a cost in there for the business rates and the security, but I was just worried about maintenance and maybe insurance, and should we be accruing something for that?
Can we answer that now, or do we have to come back? It was a very late question.
I'm happy to come in there, Leader.
Yep, please.
Thanks for the question. Essentially, outside of the now vaccination use, the building is essentially mothballed, so any maintenance costs will be absolutely minimal. So I'm comfortable with that position. And insurance costs are already being picked up as part of our overall insurance policy for the council, as far as I'm aware. So there's no additional cost there.
That's what I would have thought. Yeah. Okay. It is nice to know that we can assist the community with the mass vaccination in that new building. Okay, is there anybody else want to comment? If not, it was proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Mrs Hollingsby. All those in favour, Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier,
4.
Councillor Godfrey,
4. 4.
Councillor Field,
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby,
4.
Councillor Monk,
Or
Councillor Peel,
4.
Councillor Prater,
4.
Councillor Wybrow,
Or
and Councillor Wimble.
4.
That's unanimous, Leader.
thank you very much. We now move then on to item 11, which is the private sector housing enforcement and civil penalty policy. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. I'm pleased to bring this enforcement enhancement through to the council and to the cabinet. We do have a general enforcement policy which sets out the basic objectives and principles of each enforcement team. But since the Housing and Planning Act 2016 came into force, there have been a lot of additions to the powers and duties of the private sector team, which are more detailed policies required. These include more powers and duties to enable us to tackle the government's term, what the government terms rogue landlords. This includes the power to charge civil penalties as an alternative to prosecution. There's the smoke and carbon monoxide alarm statement principles, which we actually have already adopted in 2016, but they will form part of the new expanded policy. The penalties for breaching the minimum efficiency, energy efficiency standards, electrical safety certificates, etc. As determined by legislation, any income received from penalty charges imposed must be ring-fenced for housing enforcement activities only. I think the main message in enforcement policies, the enforcement is a last resort, and the private sector housing team take a pride in engaging with landlords in a positive way and achieving remedial work through informal dialogue and building good working relationships. The policy was sent out for consultation following the scrutiny meeting in September, and that has been returned. The responses were somewhat disappointing, but I put a lot of that down to the fact that many of the organisations that work with us and are not opposing this have been snowed under with COVID activities, COVID-related activities. I'm very happy to move this report, and I thank the officers for the thoroughness of it.
Is there a seconder for the report? Councillor Mrs. Wybrow, thank you. And does any member wish to speak to this? No. Okay, then it's proposed by Councillor Godfrey, seconded by Councillor Wybrow. All those in favour, Gemma, please.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Hollingsby.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Wybrow. For. And Councillor Wimble.
For.
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you very much. We move then on to item 12, infrastructure funding statement. Councillor Wimble.
Thank you, Leader. Shall I take it on mute? I'd like to firstly thank Charlotte and her team for the huge amount of work that she's put into infrastructure funding statement. For publishing reasons, this is a quite time-sensitive document. However, there's one correction to the report, and that is on recommendation 2, that we've had to change the date to the 31st of January, not December, as obviously with the other considerations, we cannot publish this on this date. So I'd like to recommend this report to the Cabinet.
Are you saying to January 2021?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So proposed by you. Is there a seconder? Well, I'm happy to second this. Thank you. So, okay. Over to you, members. Anybody wish to make a comment? I think that this is puts us in front of a lot of other councils having made this statement, though it is a statutory requirement. But there we go. Okay, so proposed by Councillor Wimble, seconded by me. All those in favour, please. Gemma.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Hollingsby.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Wybrow. For. And Councillor Wimble.
For.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. We now move on to item 13, customer access point and new civic offices. This is a transformation project which falls under my heading. And basically this is the set out how we go forward to look at both of those things. Mr. Madden, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Leader. No, I think the report is self-explanatory. At this stage, this is a high-level decision in principle, which will allow officers to continue into far more detailed work as we go through the year. I think as the recommendations set out, future decisions for both customer access points and any potential move of the civic officers will need to come back to Cabinet at the appropriate time once that detail has been agreed. So this is the high-level business case as set out in order to allow us, if you like, to get through this stage and to take the project forward. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to propose the recommendations, and I need a seconder.
Happy to second, Chair.
Who was that?
Councillor Field.
Field, lovely, thank you. And I've got Councillor Prater.
Thank you. In the main, I have no problem this being taken forward. A couple of thoughts on the paper which are there at the moment. I notice the costings are being done on a very good BREEAM rating. I think we should aspire better than that, and I think that our recommendations should ask that we aspire to at least an excellent BREEAM rating in terms of taking this forward for the new building. I think being in the top 25% of new domestic buildings isn't showing that leadership and aspiration that I think that we should be doing so. I think being excellent and being in the top 10% of new non-domestic buildings is the sort of aspiration that we should be looking at. So I'd potentially suggest that that is something that we should be aiming towards. I also noted within the paper at the bottom on the risk assessments, there is potential legal obstacles, seriousness high, likelihood high. There's a covenant on the Civic Centre site. Clearly, these things can be overcome, but I'd just like us to be clear that we're not going to make any significant expenditure of that £250,000 until we've got reasonable certainty that
I can give you assurance on that.
Yeah, that the likelihood and risk can be dropped on that. Obviously, as long as that can be done, I've got no problem with it going ahead. But we don't want to bank £250,000 on this project and find that we can't do it. So
absolutely, I had hoped to have an answer for that before this evening, but it is very high on our priorities to take this thing forward. Councillor Wybrow.
Thank you. Yes, I obviously support Councillor Prater in going for the highest possible BREEAM rating. I just wanted to flag up a couple of other points in the report that I particularly support. The optimising use of public transport, I think, is very important, especially if we're looking at the Otterpool site. We can't have everyone driving out there, otherwise it just defeats the whole purpose, really. Also important that we've recognised that some members of the community are digitally excluded and will need to physically access our services wherever we are. So we do need to have an office in Folkestone still. And also I welcome the extensive consultation with staff, because I think one of the other things we need to recognise is that not everybody can work at home, and so we have to make facilities for those that can't. But otherwise I'm very happy for us to go forward and look at this.
I think it goes without saying we will be consulted with the staff, and I don't disagree with any of your points. So we just we just go forward. I think as Mr. Madden said, this is a high level starter for 10, or a little bit more perhaps. Right, so anybody else got any queries? Councillor Prater.
Yeah, just having made the points that I made, I'm not sensing any huge resistance to them. I'm wondering if they could be added as additional recommendations at that stage.
Can I just note them at the moment and just dig in to see what the outcome?
In terms of the potential legal obstacles one, yeah, sure. Could we, on the other hand, add an aspiration that we'd aim for any new building to be at least excellent BREEAM?
like I say, I'd like to take officer advice on that. Chief Executive.
Thank you, councillors. I would add that we can certainly note the aspiration of Cabinet to aspire for a higher rate at this stage. The decision that's before you is in principle to carry out the work, and we would certainly look at that, and we can certainly bring back the costings of that to the next iteration. I don't think it is necessary to change the recommendations at this point, but it is and can be certainly noted and included in the further work that we undertake for you, and importantly, bring back to you for decision. Thank you.
Okay. Just as a matter of reference, really, if you feel you want to make a further recommendation, it is very useful to have prior notice, and then we can clear things out of the way. Okay. All right. Anybody else wish to comment? Okay, so it's proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Field. All those in favour? Gemma, roll call, please.
Councillor Collier.
4.
Councillor Godfrey.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
4.
Councillor Monk.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Prater.
4.
Councillor Wybrow.
4.
And Councillor Wimble.
4.
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you. We now go on to item 14, which is the Otterpool Park business plan, which is very, very important for the future of this council, I think.
And Leader, I need to leave the meeting.
Okay.
But I will be watching you on YouTube. Don't worry.
Oh, well, we'll behave ourselves. Okay,
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Okay. I'll pass this over to Ewan to introduce, and then we'll go on from there. I would just say that if we want to talk about anything about the stuff that's on the pink papers, please wait for that until we have excluded the public, if we need to. Okay. So, and after Ewan's spoken, I'll ask Mr. Quilter if he'd like to speak to it as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Members, the business plan and the appendices before you this evening are really the outcome from an iterative process between the LLP board and the council. And the report outlines that this importantly included consideration of the business plan by Overview and Scrutiny Committee and a subsequent task and finish group. It's a strategic plan which sets out the overall direction of the project and its short and medium term objectives. And in doing so, it's felt this reflects and responds to the council's ambition for Otterpool Park, and including the principle of infrastructure first, which forms part of the funding allocation. The report details the funding allocation from the council to the LLP, and it's important to note that this is in effect seen as a £70 million facility, and will be a phased drawdown, and the drawdown will be subject to specific funding agreements. Similarly, the transfer of land will be managed through an overarching strategic land agreement, and both these agreements are outlined in the heads of terms in the appendix as part of your papers. The report also recommends some changes to the members' agreement, which underpins the establishment and the operation of the company. These changes have been brought forward, as the company and the project has evolved, particularly in relation to funding. And the report also details consideration of governance and assurance, and in effect, the processes by which controls and checks and balances will be put in place to manage the land agreements, funding agreements, and general operation of or consideration of the company by the council in due course. And this will be detailed in a governance and assurance framework that would be put in place by the Chief Executive and the statutory officers of the council. So, Leader, that's a quick overview of the report, and I'll hand back to you now.
Thank you. I realise that when we do these recommendations, some of them you might want to only agree after you've discussed some of the financial details in private. So what I intend to do is I'll get Mr. Quilter to talk to this. We'll ask questions on this, but I won't go to any vote on this till after we've gone into the private session if we need to, and then I'll come back and bring it back online again to do the vote on the recommendations. Is everybody happy with that? Good. Okay then. Mr. Quilter, would you like to talk to this, please?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. So just as the chairman of the LLP board, just wanted to confirm that we've met and discussed, and although there's still a lot of work to do, we've reviewed the plan in a lot of detail, and it has the board's full support. So I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Right. Okay. So over to you, members. Councillor Mrs. Wybrow.
Thank you. Yes, when this went to overview and scrutiny, I spent quite a lot of time reading it at that stage. And I have to say, I had three main concerns out of that. One of the concerns has been answered by the confidential appendix. So I've got a few questions on that later, but that has resolved that one. The other two, I don't think you'll be surprised to know that I still think we should be aiming for zero carbon. I don't think it's good enough just to say that we want a low carbon town, because we've made a climate emergency declaration that says our estate will be zero carbon by 2030. And I just don't see how we can exclude Otterpool from that. It's been said to me that it might affect the financial viability of the project, but I've seen no evidence of that either way. So just on that basis, I can't vote to support this plan, I'm afraid. My other concern is the assurance and governance. We've been asked to delegate some pretty big decisions to the officers on the land agreement and the funding agreement. I don't really have a problem with delegating that to officers, but we're also going to be giving a lot of land and a lot of funding to a delivery vehicle that is largely governed by, is governed by a largely non-elected board, which again, I don't have a problem with. But I think before we make those decisions, we actually need to see this assurance framework. So that's the other reason why I'll be voting against this, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other councillor wish to comment on it? And I take it from what you said, Councillor Wybrow, we do need to go into private?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so does anybody want to comment on the paper before we go into private? If not, I see no hands. I move to exclude the public for the following item of business on the grounds that it is likely to disclose exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, that is, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, financial or business affairs, including contemplated as well as current activities. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Wybrow. So proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Wybrow. All those in favour, Gemma, please.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Hollingsby.
She's absent.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Wybrow.
For.
And Councillor Wimble.